Alright guys, today I'm going to give you a quick tip on how to set your settings for the 360 Mega. And this is kind of the way it looks out of the box. My range right now is on 80, and you can see I've got a Helix 12, and the first thing I want to do is I kind of want to utilize this big screen. It doesn't make sense to buy a Helix 12 and then have this zoomed in. So that's where I'm going to use the plus or the minus buttons. So I hit plus once, you can see it zooms in a little bit. Now we're in we're in about 8 foot of water right here, and you can see I'm really losing the information here. So first of all, I'm going to change my range. 80 foot is too wide, and so what I do is just hit menu, and I go to range right here, and I'm going to bring that down to about 70, maybe even 60. In shallower water, I'm probably going to be in the 60 foot range most of the time. Now I'm going to exit out of that. If you look down here in the corner, that tells me that each ring is 15 foot. Okay, so here's my boat icon. Incidentally, that's not to scale to my actual boat. So I've got a 20-foot boat, and the bow, because of this heading sensor, is pretty accurate. So that's I'm midway through, so that's about 8 foot out to this first ring, and then another 15 foot and another 15 foot. The back side, though, is not accounting for how big of a boat I have, because they wouldn't know that I have a 20-foot boat. So if that's accurate, this is another 8 foot, and that's 15. So my boat is probably going back to about this far right here. Okay, and I'll show you that in a second when I get into shallower water. I'll put the talon down, you'll be able to see it. Okay, so the first setting is I want to fill up my screen. Okay, so if I want to utilize this screen the best, and if I'm going to be working down a bank and I'm fishing by myself, what I'm going to do is hit menu, go to display, and right now it's on 360, so it's going all the way around. If I go to front, now I'm only looking at the front part of my of the contours I want to look at. Now I may want to change the range a little bit now that I go to front, so I can exit out of that. If I change the range, I could bring it up to maybe 65 foot, something like that, maybe 70 foot. But you can see it's kind of getting washed out and we're not seeing much, so I think I will keep it at 60. Alright, the next thing I want to do for my setting is hit menu once, go to enhance, and that's going to bring up a sensitivity and contrast. Now for the sensitivity, depending on the day, even if I fish the same body of water every single time, the water is going to change. It can be clear on some days, it can be cloudier on some days, there can be a plankton bloom, there could be an insect hatch. So because of that, you really should change your sensitivity every single day. Okay, and right now we're not seeing much. We've kind of moved a little bit away from the wooden structure I was going to look at. So I'll come back in a second and we'll get a better view here so we can play with the sensitivity. Alright, so you can see right here we've got a tree. That's the trunk. You can see the branches going out. You can also see individual fish in here, all these little white dots. Those are probably crappie, maybe some bluegill. So, whoops. So again, what I want to do is go to enhance, and the contrast, I want to keep bringing that up until it starts to wash out, which it's starting to wash out there, and then back it off a little bit. Alright, so now another thing that I can adjust is the actual speed of this transducer. And it goes from 1 to 5, or 1 to 6, sorry. So 1 is going to be very slow, and that's going to give you the most detail because it's sweeping across very slowly, so it's going to read the most detail. So when we get out of this, you'll see as this starts to sweep back up, We'll give it a second to refresh as it goes. So every time this band goes by, it's refreshing the information. So this should be a little clearer because I just slowed it down. And so here it comes. I'm on spot lock too, so things may adjust on the screen a little bit. Yeah, you can see the tree shifted over to the right a little bit because of the spot lock. But now you're really seeing some good detail in that tree. So I've got the settings pretty good. Now as far as the speed, if I go all the way up to 6, that's the fastest one, you're going to see less detail, but so you can see now that tree has gotten pretty washed out. So I'm not seeing the detail. The advantage of going on a faster speed is if I'm fishing down a bank pretty fast, and I just want to see what's out there, and I don't care about the detail. If I'm camped out trying to fish on something, you might want it on fast because you can see the shadows of the fish moving. These are fish. And if you focus on the shadow, every sweep past it, they're going to move a little bit. So those are fish that are moving around. So let me slow this back down. A lot of people say to put it on 3. That's the average. But again, it all depends on what I'm doing. If I want to see the details of that tree, I'll slow it down even more. And then another thing you might want to do is change or play with the palettes. So the palettes, there's several palettes, and I can see for this, and it all depends on the cloudiness of the day, your sunglasses, as to which palette, but I think palette 2 looks a little bit better than 3. Palette 1 is kind of a blue. I think on the camera it's not looking real good, but for me, I can actually see the fish really jump out. Like right there, there's a fish that I can clearly see. In fact, he moved when that swept across. So there's all kinds of fish right in here, and a couple of those are bigger fish. So those could be bass or walleye or something. So again, every time you use your 360, depending on the day, you need to change the sharpness, the contrast, the sensitivity, the palette, and depending on what you want to look at, you're going to have to change the speed. I hope this helps. We'll see you on the water.